Hello, welcome to the Friends of Zeus podcast. My name's Zeus. Let me get rid of the business first. Please look for us on Facebook at Friends of Zeus Podcast. Same thing on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher. What's the other one?
Rumble.
Rumble. And one more. Oh, Apple iTunes. We're on there now. And we're also on Anchor as well.
MySpace.
What's that?
MySpace.
And we're on Mike's BBS board.
Yeah, BBS, dial up.
Yeah. You can also find us, you can email us at FOZ@friendsofzeuspodcast.com. And we're working on our website. And I never say this, but tonight, for me at least, we're recording live from Patriots Pub and Grill in Fairfax. So anybody wants to come out and have a beer or buy me a beer, or I'll buy you a beer just to fucking show up, we'll do it. But that being said,
So we'll do it live.
Do it live.
Do it live. So with all that being said, tonight we've got Mr. Mike Messier. He is a jack of all trades. He can tell us if he's a master of any of them, but when I was listening to Disregard the Vampire, it appears that he's just about as eager to pick on himself as we are often. So I'm going to go with master of none. But all that being said, I guess, Mike, why don't you tell us how you got into the industry?
Hey guys, Mike Messier, glad to be here. I was born in Arlington, Virginia, so it's nice to be talking to some guys from Virginia. And I went to Robinson High School, and I still have friends in the Beltway area. But basically, how did I get into the industry? In high school, at Robinson High School, there was a guy named Mr. Harvey who taught a TV production class, and this was an elective that I could take instead of home ec or industrial arts 2 or whatever it was. So I signed up for this TV production class, and around the same time I was teaching myself how to edit music videos using 2 VCRs and a boombox with an audio cassette output. And one of my first works was actually a tribute video to the Road Warriors tag team. I would take all my wrestling VHS tapes and assemble, a bunch of clips of their wrestling matches against the Skyscrapers and the Steiners and the SST. And then I would put the song Iron Man by Black Sabbath, the extended, 7 or 9 minute version of whatever it was. And then I made another one for a class with the Elton John song Rocket Man. That video has actually made it to subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel on Mike's Archives. And basically, that's how I got into doing stuff at all. And then it was in college several years later that a friend of mine named George Lamastro and myself worked together to make a movie called Man and You, a Providence love story. And we really had no idea what we were doing. We wrote scenes, but we didn't really write a script. We were kind of writing the scenes as we were making a movie on just like long pieces of paper, and bringing in whoever we could as actors. The movie, it was good. It wasn't great, but we finished it. And it turned out to be an 80-minute movie that we made in about a year and a half, which at the time seemed to be forever. But later on in my career, I said, man, I'd love to be able to make an 80-minute movie in a year and a half, So it's kind of like the more you learn or the more experience you have, sometimes you lose a little bit of that naive energy that you have when you first get started. Years later, I did a movie. I got into the Screen Actors Guild by playing Sybil Shepherd's son in a movie titled Hard Luck that Mario Van Peebles directed. I had scenes with Mario, Sybil, and Wesley Snipes. A couple of years after that, I went to do extra work in a movie called Hope Springs, but I actually got used in a scene with Elizabeth Shue and Meryl Streep herself, and had a scene with Frances McDormand and Richard Jenkins in the HBO series Olive Kitteridge. More recently, I was a script consultant for a Lennox Lewis documentary, Lennox Lewis Undisputed, that Dr. Dre actually read some of the words that I wrote for that piece. Wow. And I was a co-writer on a movie called The Manor, which is a horror film that we got Kevin Nash to be in. Kevin Nash, Diesel from WWF. So I've done some stuff. The last 2 years, I've been in Jacksonville, Florida, with this worldwide situation we've all experienced. I've kind of put my efforts more into writing books. I've translated Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite, from the screenplay version into the novel version, which is available on Amazon. And Fighter Play Basketball is hot off the press about a week ago. This is available now on paperback, hardcover, and Kindle, and even Kindle Vella. So I think I covered it about as good as I could. But there's some other experiences with pro wrestling and other things that I'm happy to talk about any of it.
Wow. That's,
so with film, what's your passion? What if you could do one thing, what would it be? Would it be the writing, the acting, directing, creating? What is it that brought you to it? And I know you have to do other things, in the industry. You can't always do exactly what you want to do, but what's your main focus if you had one?
I don't think that's one thing, guys. I don't know if I do have a main focus, but I think that for me, the acting and writing are probably the things I enjoy the most. Acting, I will say, because, you get that rush, that adrenaline of being the character and of playing a character that's either similar to yourself or different than yourself. There's obviously more attention as an actor. I mean, when people say, hey, let's go see a movie, 9 times out of 10, they'll say, let's go see a Harrison Ford movie. Let's go see, Will Smith movie. Let's go see a Sylvester Stallone movie.
I don't know about
most people don't. No. Well, my point is, most people don't say, let's go see a Steve Soderbergh movie, or let's go see a Steven. You know what I mean? Most people think, the general public, maybe not film aficionados, but the general public think in terms of actors. So that's just my buzz, being that guy. But as far as what I do the best, I think my best talent is writing. I also enjoy acting. Acting coaching and being a director, but I'm not a good editor. So I always have to work with a good editor when I make stuff, because it's just not a skill set that I have. But I like the collaborative efforts of working with good editors.
It was just, as you were going over all the things you did, I always look back at this, and this podcast, for me at least, and I think I speak for the other guys, we really enjoy this. So, whether of course, we would like it to be received, would we like to have influence, things like that, that'd be great, but we enjoy it. And as you were talking about all the things you've done, I'm sure on some levels you probably diminish like we do, but it's just a podcast. I just at times you'll do that, but then I think about it. You've done 17 things that nobody has or will do in their entire life, and much like with us, I don't know anybody else that has a podcast, much less did too, and it's just neat to hear people's accomplishments and realize everything that they put into it. I mean, you worked with well-known actors and actresses. You said, what is Dre read your words, man.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody else that can say that. It's really cool to hear.
Thanks. Yeah. And that's one thing, Zeus, that I've kind of learned just even recently, the last couple of years. I was thinking about, hey, I've got this, for instance, I had a screenplay accepted into the Fort Myers Beach International Film Festival last summer. My screenplay, Fighter Play Basketball, that this novel is based on. And my thought, to myself is, wow, I got accepted into this festival, but, they're not going to pay for my hotel for the week. I got to pay for my own hotel, and I got to drive there, and blah, blah, blah. And so the cynical side of oneself, that mother culture voice can get in your head and say, hey, what's the point of entering these film festivals if you have to pay to go to be a part of it? Of course, they comp me for the actual movie screenings and all the parties and stuff. But what I realized at that moment, this is just about 9 months ago, I said, the payoff is the experience. The payoff is I get to go to this film festival and get this VIP pass and walk around with it. And I can talk about my project, and I can meet some cool people and see some cool films. And I'll be going back there in a couple of weeks for the 2022 version because another script of mine also ran and was accepted. So what I've learned, guys, is at least for me at this point in my life and my career, it's not necessarily a financial payoff or dating the hottest girl in town or whatever. It's the experiences that come with these situations. And if I put my focus on the experiences, I've had a pretty good time. If I start getting caught up in how much did this pay or how much did that pay, that's somebody else's mindset. That's not even really me, you know?
Yeah. Kind of
Yeah,
like,
and
oh, go ahead,
well,
Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, and having people see your work, right? I mean, it's like one of the things that's great about cinema is, you know, the social part, having everyone, you know, the lights go down and you've got everyone as a captive audience for.
I have no
you know,
idea what's going on with my lighting. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's the computer's like auto focusing and it keeps going up and down.
But you
I
have
need Mike's help, I think, with my lighting.
you have people watch your stuff, you know, for a certain amount of time, and I mean that's got its own reward, right? I mean, just having.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Money aside, I mean, that's, you know, I mean, there's a thing. Look, there's a lot of creative people that do a lot of great things that no one ever sees. So, you know, we've talked about it, you know, in relation to this podcast, like certain episodes we've had. It's one thing to create something. It's a whole other thing to have people see it, right? That's like a whole other, that's the business, right? That's the business side.
And the beauty of creating this for us, and maybe you can relate it in some fashion, is it's for us. Even in the beginning, it was kind of effortless. Like, I think we were just lucky to have the right group of people get together. The chemistry was good. I mean, it's called Friends of Zeus because I know these guys.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, right.
they never knew each other before, and now, like, I guarantee we haven't all gotten together in the same room yet, but it's gonna be, you know, like old. You know, like old friends getting together. We all really.
Well, I sneak into everyone's houses in the middle of the night when they're sleeping, but they don't know it. So we have been together, but they're not aware of it yet.
Yeah, but that was Mike. That was only when you dressed as Santa Claus.
Yes, that's right. That's true.
That's
yeah,
true.
that's what I was dressed up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Oddly, I don't have a chimney.
That was difficult. I will say that was difficult.
Yes, it was. His hips are no longer that good.
Those aren't pillows. It's not a chimney.
Exactly. So, you know what, Mike, I'm going to ask a question. This is kind of off the cuff, but you're a film guy. Jack and I are huge film guys.
Mike too.
It's funny you said like Soderbergh, because I think this group leans more towards the eclectic, you know, not always the well-known directors. Like, I'm gonna like George Clooney is a great director. I know he's kind of high profile, but he's a really good director.
Up in the air. Yeah.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan back with like Memento.
Oh yeah, Memento's great.
Yeah. Who else? Paul Wes Anderson. Tarantino.
I saw Licorice Pizza twice. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
That's Paul.
I've heard
Thomas
about
Anderson's.
it. I think
Paul Thomas
I think
Anderson.
Mike was talking about that.
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson. I actually, speaking of Paul Thomas Anderson, Dana and I just watched The Phantom Thread on Netflix, which I had no idea was even his movie until.
Was that good? I haven't seen it. I would think it was.
No, it's interesting. It's definitely worth a watch because the guy can direct and Daniel Day-Lewis can
It's awesome.
act.
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis could play a shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'd be like, damn, I really believed he was a shoe.
Yeah,
A left shoe.
a left
his,
shoe. Yeah.
his own left
For his
shoe.
left foot.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question I was getting at, because we've done this with us before, but what would you say are your top 5 movies? Just to see if you're
sure. I'll give it a shot. I mean, I start with Highlander, the original Highlander from 1986,
Nice.
Christopher Lambert.
Right.
I probably go to Pulp Fiction. I have a Pulp Fiction tattoo, and oddly enough, the tattoo that I have reads "Zed is dead" with the samurai sword underneath it. And then years later, I worked with the guy who played Zed, Peter Green, on a
Nice.
movie called The Mick and the Trick that's in post-production. We filmed that in October 2020. My friend Danucci directed, and that'll be coming out eventually. But to get to work with a guy named Zed, and of course I had to show him the tattoo.
You got to do that. Yeah.
So he was cool. I like Peter. So that's two. For some reason, I want to say Forrest Gump. I think because I always think of, when I think of Pulp Fiction, I think of Forrest Gump. And
Same
I have
here.
a video on my, I think of my Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I think my 4th or 5th most watched video is Why I Hate Jenny from Forrest Gump. I saw I saw Forrest Gump again about a year ago at Disney Springs. They had it as a reprise. And then I went to see the movie, and it just brings up all these emotions I have about the Jenny character. Nothing against Robin Wright, because she's fantastic, but I just have some issues with the Jenny character. So people can look up my rant against her, against the character, not against Robin
Can you
Wright.
not like Jenny?
so
that
that's-
scene where she's like throwing the rocks at the house? I mean, that's a tearjerker. How can you?
You're
What
a
was,
tearjerker.
real quick, what was the?
What my
complaint?
gist against Jenny is, I feel that first of all, she doesn't tell Forrest he's a father for 6 or 7 years, right?
He has
So
to
he's
show
got
up.
a kid. Yeah, she doesn't tell him that, hey, you're a dad for 6 or 7 years. There's a scene where she goes off with the anti-war protester guy that gives her a slap across the face, and Forrest is trying to be with her, and she takes that abusive guy over Forrest. I just find that she makes a lot of choices that are kind of not in her own best interest, and
Or his.
Yeah.
It's funny you. I want to get to your 5th one, but it's funny you mentioned it because I was just reading this article, and it was talking about how she's kind of a bitch, and that the Osmond character, his son,
It is.
he was loaded, and she didn't know who the father was, and she knew that Forrest loved her and he'd take care of this kid, which I thought was a very interesting kind of sixth sense, red doorknobs kind of moment of holy shit, none of it's
Right.
true. But it's funny you mentioned that scene because
That's so you guys got some dark readings into Forrest Gump.
right?
Jesus.
I'm just,
Well, the scene that Tom mentioned though, or not that scene, the tearjerker scene for me in that, and then we'll get to your 5th one. For me was when he's like, when she does say that this is your son, and he's like, he's not like me, is he? And I'm like blubbering every single time. It's the movie's like 20 years old. Every single time I see that scene, I just
Me too. I
almost
can't
30.
I
It's
can't watch
so-
this.
such a good movie.
Yeah, well, Tom Hanks is great, but no, Jenny's such an awful character that most people don't know about the sequel that didn't really take off. It's called Forrest Has AIDS.
I read the book. It's a good book.
Wow. Brutal.
Sorry.
I believe they were going to title it for the movies because that was a little politically incorrect. So they're just going to say Forrest has carpi sarcoma.
That's fine.
Okay, that's a medical joke.
Yeah, thanks.
It's cancer you
wait,
get.
this may be like,
Hey, you guys suck. All right. Anyway, Mike, tell us your 5th movie.
I think I get 2 more, so I'll go with Goodfellas and let's say Boogie
Nice.
Nights, and maybe this Licorice Pizza would be the new one. That would be like number 6, because I think you guys would
Wow.
like that movie too. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you were like 3 of my top 10.
Yeah. I mean,
Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, and what was the first one? Oh, Highlander.
Highlander, yeah.
That's like my nerd favorite one. No offense,
No, it's
but
okay.
like that's where I go with that. That's like it's guilty pleasure. However, they're talking about Henry Cavill playing it. They're redoing it, and Henry Cavill. All I can say is that guy is dreamy, and I want to see him do it.
They've been talking about a Highlander reboot for about 20 years, so I mean, I hope it happens, but they've been talking about that for so long now.
Clancy Brown is still around.
He's great as the Kurgan. He's awesome.
Yeah, he could still do it.
That's the type of actor, guys, that I would like to be honest with you, like a guy like Clancy Brown or there's a book that's like that guy, who's that guy, or it's a book about actors, like character actors, like guys that you see and everything, but you don't know who their name is.
Like
And
Clint
that's
Howard.
Clint Howard is a good one. My buddy Armin Garrow is like that. Armin was just in Coda, and he's had scenes in Sopranos. But and he's from East Providence, Rhode Island. But there's a lot of actors that they have working careers, and every once in a while, like Clancy Brown, you know him as the Kurgan, that he did the show on HBO that he was so good in. But it's like you don't necessarily have to be Kevin Costner or Harrison Ford to have a successful acting career or to be a well-received actor.
It's interesting too. I get I have a pretty intimate connection to Hollywood through my sister. She's a pretty she's been up for Grammys for Glee. She's hair and makeup. So the impression that I get of Hollywood is it's relatively easy to get in, but it's hard to maintain. Like I don't know. You've got to put in the legwork, and it feels like if you do it long enough, the wheels are gonna click. They're gonna connect, or the gears are gonna connect.
She was up for a Grammy.
Oh yeah, she was up for a Grammy for hair and makeup for Glee.
Oh, Grammy was music.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Grammy.
Oscar.
Emmys. I'm sorry. And she's working on Picard now. Like she's up there. If you name an actor, she has probably met them.
HWA, hair and makeup artists, that's huge. It really is. And they give Academy Awards for hair and makeup, because it's well deserved, because those people put a lot of time into those jobs. And they're also kind of like, if you go to a barber shop and the barber is like the therapist of the neighborhood, oftentimes the hair and makeup people, I want to say ladies, because usually in my experience they have been women, but not always, I'm sure. But oftentimes they are the therapists that keep the movie flowing in a good way, because when an actor has to sit in the chair and kind of decompress, or even share some rumors or gossips from the set, or kind of vent about their acting process, a lot of time the hair and makeup people are the ones that listen to that.
Kind of like a white noise situation. They forget they're there, and it's this relaxing. No, who doesn't like to get their hair? Well, I don't get my hair shampooed anymore, but when I did, it was fantastic.
Sure.
But it's a relaxing. It's almost therapeutic, probably to a certain degree. Yeah, the makeup end of it probably not so much, but like the getting them dolled up and that part of it's probably very relaxing. You're sitting down, kind of just chilling.
It's a lot of work, though.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, especially if it's any kind of sci-fi or horror jammy.
Yeah. It's. Go ahead.
One of my first film experiences being on that movie Hard Luck, the Mario Van Peebles film. The hair and makeup ladies were fantastic. They were just super friendly. And like I said, I came into the movie like in the last week of filming for my 2 or 3 scenes in the movie. And, they had to give me a really bad haircut because my character was supposed to be kind of mentally slow. And the idea was that he gave himself a really bad haircut with like a rash in his head. So they gave me this crazy haircut with special effects for the rash in my head, like ringworm basically. And people on the set, when I started going to lunch, they thought I really was like a freak. They thought I had this skin rash in my hair and didn't know what to make of me. And because these ladies did their job so well, and it was kind of just a funny story. But yeah, hair and makeup, that's a huge thing. So I'm certain your sister's doing great. That's awesome.
Oh, so to my point, what I was getting at is it feels like you got to kind of go into shark mode. And I'm not saying in a vicious way, but like, how sharks have to keep moving or they'll die. That's what Hollywood feels like to me. Like, if you stop, you better have some real street cred, like a Daniel Day-Lewis or Tarantino, who could just at any time just jump back in. But most people, you know, your B level, they got to constantly be going at it. That's the impression I get. I could be wrong, but it feels
I
like
think
that's
you're right.
Well, the other thing too, with like character actors, like I'm getting back to Clancy Brown, he's a big favorite of mine, but you know, the character actors, you know, going back to, I'm thinking even like Peter Lorre from like Casablanca or whatever. The thing about a good character actor is there's a shorthand. Like as a viewer, typically they have small parts, and when they come on screen, they play a type. And for the writer, there's a lot of background filled in. Like when Clancy Brown comes on screen, you already know a lot about this character, no matter who he's playing. You know, he's got a physicality about him. He typically plays a bad guy, typically. You know, Peter Lorre was always like this kind of like creepy, not bad, but kind of like, you know, between the lines. So what I'm saying is a good character actor brings the shorthand with them that allows the writer to not have to fill in all these gaps. And
yeah, it's like a plug-in. It's like a
plug-in. Yeah.
This is what we're getting here. Boom,
Right.
put 'em in.
And like Clancy Brown, like I don't know if you guys know, Jack probably does because he's in the horror films, but The Prophecy with Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
They had Eric Roberts play Saint Michael, and I was like, I mean, before like you knew Saint Michael was coming, and I was like, this character needs to be Clancy Brown. And then Eric Roberts appears, and I'm like, the fucking disaster. Like it should have been Clancy Brown.
Wait, do you mean Eric Stoltz?
No, it was Eric Roberts. Julia Roberts' brother played Saint Michael in The Prophecy.
Mike, that had to be a sequel.
Maybe it was Prophecy 2. Maybe it was Prophecy 2.
Prophecy
Well,
2.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Same
keep
thing.
in mind, there were a lot of questions left unanswered in Prophecy 1.
I'm just saying. The only reason I'm bringing it up is as a viewer, I was like, that should be Clancy Brown. Like if I was a casting director, I'd be like, it has to be Clancy Brown, because I would already know it's the strong, kind of like powerful kind of. Anyway, whatever. I'm saying character actors get a lot of derision, like, oh, they're just a character actor. I'm like, a good character actor can make a film. Really, really.
Eric Roberts is a great one too, because like he's so hit or miss. There are roles where he is the perfect guy and he helps make the movie, and then there's best of the best.
He was like Runaway Train. He was great on Runaway Train.
He was, Voight. Oh man, I just saw that a few weeks ago.
I think Mike, you have some history with Eric Roberts, don't you? Didn't I?
Yeah, actually, I just worked with Eric Roberts in my friend Dan Hunter directed a film, and he cast me as Hank in the movie Mr. Birthday, which is actually a family movie or a kids movie. And what the theme of the movie is that there's a special group of birthday party engineers who give birthdays to kids that don't have friends to have a birthday party with. Like a kid that's being bullied, or a kid that's new to town. And then this single father and his daughter, the daughter is new to town and she doesn't have any friends, so that the birthday group swoops in and gives her a birthday party. And then her and her single dad, who's played by Jason London from Dazed and Confused, they become part of the birthday team. And Eric Roberts is in the movie as kind of a bad guy character. And I had a scene at the end of the movie. There's a whole big blowout with my character, Eric Roberts, Jason London, the female leads. It was really fun. And I got to, my first day on the set was Eric Roberts' last day on the set. So we only, very few times what wrestling term I mark out for the people, co-stars especially. But in this case, I did mark out. I asked Eric if we could take a picture together. He only takes selfies, so I had to take the picture myself. And of course, I didn't have my phone on me at the time, so I had to borrow another guy's phone, Paul Lugo, one of the producers, to take the selfie. But Eric was a great guy. And then I interviewed Eric Roberts for Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I drove from Florida. Yeah, thanks. I drove from Florida back to Rhode Island just to be part of the premiere. Because those are all my friends from New England. David Gear from Connecticut, Tommy DiNucci, Chad Verdi Jr. They were all there for the movie, and Eric Roberts came, and Jason London came, and we had right there at the Warwick Showcase the premiere of Mr. Birthday that people can now see on YouTube for like $6.99 or whatever else streaming devices. You know what I mean?
Writing it down.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, he's definitely he's like B-list royalty, I would say. Like he's always gonna have a job.
Well, you know how he got screwed, in my opinion. He kind of became a B-lister. There was a movie back in the 80s called Star 80.
He was great in that.
Yeah, no, he was so good and creepy in that I think he turned people off. Like, honestly, I think he got typecasted as that kind of a sleazy dirtbag. Yeah. I mean, it could be anything, but I remember seeing that as a kid, and I was totally convinced that he could, that he was like that. Like,
wasn't Bo Derek the
no, it was Mariel Hemingway.
Dorothy Stratton.
No,
I think it was the Dorothy Stratton was the subject matter.
Yeah, it was the Dorothy Stratton story.
Right.
It was Mariel Hemingway, Eric Roberts, and I want to say there's a couple other people that that was a launching point for a few actors.
Yeah. Well, Mariel Hemingway was pretty big back then too.
That was a huge movie.
He's a great guy. Just so you guys know, in real life, I would testify that Eric Roberts is a true class act and a very friendly guy. I guess how else can I put it? Just not you know what I mean? He's just a friendly guy who and the reality is, like I asked him in our interview, I said, do you have any advice for young actors out there? And he said, treat everybody that you work with as they might be your boss someday.
Because they could be, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of I'm sorry. Interesting to me is I fully believe that his sister would not have even gotten into the industry if he hadn't made his mark at that point. He probably got her into something because he was early 80s, late 70s, he was doing okay. He's been in a few films that stand out. Maybe he wasn't the lead guy, but
well, Zeus, you just watched one. What about he was actually in The Dark Knight?
That's right. Yes, he was.
What was his role? I didn't.
He was like
a crime boss.
Yeah, he was one of the gangsters. One of the crime bosses.
Damn good.
Okay.
Yeah, just watched The Dark Knight the other day. Just quick little tangent alert.
Oh no!
Man, that movie holds up so well.
I'm gonna write this down. Are you saying The Dark Knight's a good movie? I'm gonna watch this movie.
You haven't seen it? It's got this Australian fellow named
Friends of Zeus always has the latest.
It's Heath, like the candy bar.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna
right on top of
that you would write.
Check it out.
Finger on the pulse.
This Australian chap, he does quite a good job playing this character
as
called
Joker. Joker.
But he's not really funny. Yeah. He's really kind of dark. He's not really a Joker so much as a violent sociopath.
Yeah, at one point he dressed up like a woman. It's a real hoot.
Like a nurse. But I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Hey, listen, I got a question. A question for Mike. Hey, Mike, you mentioned you rattled off including Eric Roberts, all these different jobs that you had as an actor, working with some big names. Now, how does that even happen? I mean, do you have an agent that got you these jobs, or was it all walk-ons and tryouts? How did that work?
I'll be right back, guys.
Great question. I lived in Rhode Island for quite some time, and in Rhode Island, we had a very good run from maybe 2002 to 2010, where a lot of movies came to the state of Rhode Island and also to Massachusetts because of tax incentives. So state tax incentives are a big thing now. Steve Feinberg of the Rhode Island Film Office and Carol Conley, his assistant, were very good about getting projects to Rhode Island. So things like the movie Brotherhood, the TV series Brotherhood on Showtime, that came to Rhode Island. And I actually did some stunt work on one of those episodes.
Wow.
So for a good catch, there was a real buzz in New England. In Massachusetts, Adam Sandler was doing movies left and right. In Massachusetts. I was a extra in some of the scenes for That's My Boy, I think, when he played the kid that had the guy that had the kid with his school teacher, right? Yeah, and so there was a time when there was a lot of activity in New England between Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. I was going to tell you guys a story earlier about John Turturro because I was on there was a series about the New York Yankees, and John Turturro was playing
Billy Martin.
Billy Martin. So I did a day of work on there, and like Turturro was kind of directing me. You know what I mean? It was a fun situation. Cool. So the point is, of all the people in New England, I was just around, and I guess I had established some ties with the casting directors, like Amy Mulhall of Let's Do It Casting and the people at Boston Casting. They basically just knew who I was because I was there for such a long time, and I would take, acting workshops and do, business of acting classes that either Annie or Carolyn Pickman or other people up there would do. I would go to these classes, and whenever you take an acting class at a casting, I mean, that's kind of a smart thing to do. If there's a casting director who is also doing an acting workshop or a seminar, as an actor, you should pay the money and go to it.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, you're getting yourself exposed to these people that could possibly hire you.
Yeah.
So the reality is, I didn't have a manager. I didn't have an agent. I do have an entertainment lawyer in Providence who's helped me out. But the reality is, I just was there. I did a public access show for a long time. And sometimes people would tell me that they would watch my show because I had a really interesting start time. My show was on literally at 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. On Sunday mornings. Like the Saturday night crowd, people would go out and get drunk, and then they come home and put my show on public access.
Yeah.
And I had like the Suicide Girls, and I had independent films on my 2-hour crazy Mike Messier show. So my point is, I was always just getting myself out there. I did stand-up comedy. I did stand-up comedy in Boston at a place that I think Joe Rogan performed at. Mike's. It was like Mike's Comedy Bar or whatever it was. It was a cool place. Stand-up comedy was something that I liked doing, but I found myself being a very angry comedian, and I didn't like how I felt about myself after I did stand-up comedy a lot of times. So I kind of faded out of that. I did do some pro wrestling matches. I had about 13 matches, but I developed a character named Smudge Baby that was kind of my take on the Goldust character. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just really got myself into anything I could do. I was part of the spoken word poetry thing. I got into that. You know what I mean? I wrote a stage play, couple of stage plays, Victorious, The Battle for Sanity. I wrote it and I produced it. I had another guy direct it. And then I directed a short play called Orlandus and His Puppets Without Strings. I was in Rhode Island, and I did a lot of stuff up there in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and parts of Connecticut. And eventually, I mean, here's another tip. If you stick around long enough, if you're not as successful as you want to be, or if you're not making the inroads that you'd like to make, maybe you make some friends that are doing better than you. And that's kind of what happened with me, because I have a couple of guys, a couple of friends of mine, that their careers are better than mine. Yeah. But they've been nice enough to cast me in some of their movies, like this Mr. Birthday. And I'm working to the point where I can return the favor at some point. I'd like to and cast those guys in one of my movies, because although it's great to have your friends look out for you and give you some of the rub, so to speak, I would rather be the guy giving them the rub, not in a perversive way, but in a, I'm using the wrestling lingo.
I've given but the guy different podcast. But the nice thing is, Mike, you're compelled to do this, which is fantastic. I mean, that's really, I mean, you want to do it, you're doing it, you're figuring it out, and I mean, I think that's fantastic. I do just as a question, as a cinephile, like I love film. I was a projectionist
you
for
said cinephile, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Zeus. I was a projectionist for way too long in my life. What's your take on the current state of cinema as it relates to getting out of this COVID thing, theatrical exhibition, and all that, and like where things are going? I mean, obviously, in my viewpoint, I mean, a lot of people's viewpoint, things are at a low point, you know. I mean, is cinema, as far as like public exhibition, is that gone? Is it being replaced by streaming? Like, what's your view on that?
I have such mixed feelings. I'll say this, luckily I'm here in Florida, and one good thing is like we had the movie theaters were closed for a couple of months, but eventually they started getting reopened. And I think here in Jacksonville, I can drive where I live right now. I can get to about 5 different movie theaters in any direction in about a 15-minute drive to like 5 different theaters. And Orlando, I mean, I remember when the movies were shut down for 2 or 3 months, I drove 2.5 hours to Orlando to see Back to the Future and Terminator 2 at the Universal Studios Theater, because I was so well, I was so hard up to see a movie that they finally, and you had to go and wear the mask and everything. I started doing on my YouTube channel, subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I call it Mike's Instant Movie Reviews. So basically, I go to about 4 or 5 movies a week in the theater. And when I get out, I typically do a live stream of Mike's Instant Movie Review for whatever movie I saw. And, for instance, I saw Morbius last night in Orlando. I drove here from Jacksonville to Epcot Center yesterday. And then I went to Disney Springs after, saw Morbius at 8:30, and then drove back after the movie. Back home for like 3 hours and got home at like 2:30 in the morning.
Man.
So
How
I like it. Dedication for you.
How was Morbius? I'm curious because that dude's such a weird actor. Like
Leto? Yeah.
I liked it. This is why I liked it. The Marvel, I typically see most movies, like I can't say I see all the movies, but I see most movies. I'm not so educated in the Marvel comic universe where I can tell you which character works with this one or what timeline is screwed up or whatever. But I know what I like. And this one I liked more than most of them. This one and the Scarlett Johansson one from last summer, because I thought this one had a story that I could kind of relate to. The vampire thing, the bad element. I kind of dug it. My Distance from Avalon story also has some vampire elements to it too. So I enjoyed Morbius. As far as your question, I want to take that on. I see a lot of special events in the movie theaters too. This Saturday night, there's a big boxing match that you can go to the movie theater, the AMC theaters, and pay $25 to watch the big fight on the big screen. I just watched WrestleMania Night 2 this past Sunday night on the big screen in the movie theater, the AMC. I watched the Tyson Fury boxing match against Deontay Wilder. I watched their 3rd fight on the big screen, and guys, I'm telling you, I saw the Transformers movie, 6 or 7 months ago. They had like a one-night reprise of the Transformers movie, and that theater was pretty packed. Wow. So I think what's happening is some of these Fathom special events, or the boxing matches, or the UFC, or the pro wrestling, AEW. I've seen like 3 pay-per-views of All Elite Wrestling on the big screen. Some of these things are getting bigger crowds than the typical movie. I would, a lot of people say, oh, there's no good movies out there. They're all comic book movies. I say no, because I just saw a movie with the lady from 21 Grams, Naomi Watts, just had a great movie that I saw where she plays a search and rescue lady, right? And the movie with Frances McDormand where she's in the van, a couple of years ago, the one that, right. And that same year, Robin Wright herself had a movie where she plays a woman that goes up a mountain to get away from people for a while. And there really are, Julie Delpy had a great movie in the theater. Now, guess what? A lot of times I go see these movies in the matinee, and a lot of times I am the only one in the movie theater, which is kind of a mixed thing, because I love it. Yeah, I'll take my shoes off and I'll crack my neck, and if I want to call somebody in the previews, I will. But if I discover that if I go to the movies on a Friday or Saturday night, at least in Jacksonville, there's a lot of teenagers coming out to the theater to see horror films. You know what I mean? You go see something like X or whatever, and you see that on a Friday or Saturday night. If you go see a horror movie, you're going to have a pretty good crowd in there. Last night, Monday night in Orlando at Disney Springs for Morbius, It was, so I think we'll be okay. I think it's always good to encourage people to go see more movies in the theater, because if the movie theatrical experience goes away, we're going to miss it. So that's why I always, and you can get those subscriptions now. I don't know if you have those guys in Virginia, but here you can pay $22 a month and see basically as many movies as you want a month at either AMC or Regal theaters. So that's a great deal.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, it's just I like the theater experience, and I have 2 boys, so like tomorrow it's spring break, so tomorrow I'm probably gonna take the boys to go see something. But it's so damn expensive. It's, I mean, with 2 kids, popcorn, drinks, all that, because you got to do popcorn, you got to do drinks. That's my feeling on it. You know, you're walking out of there $80, easy. You know, it gets up there quick.
If you've got AMC, because I think there was an AMC theater, I want to say, and my friend lives in Crofton, Maryland, they had AMC there. But I'm telling you, it's like $22. And the deal is you can see 3 movies, right, per month. You can see 3 movies a week, and you pay $22 a month, and you get like 10 or 20% discount on the concessions. Well, so I would say
time is the part of it too. With 2 kids and doing the podcast and work, you know, for me, I wish. You know,
Mike, I'm sorry, I'm on my podcast right now. Hold on. Hold on, I'm on my podcast.
Mike, if it's none of my business, Mike, if it's none of my business, you can tell me, but I'm just curious, with all this creative outlet that you're undertaking, do you have a day job, and what do you do that's not fun?
I run a film festival is one thing I do, but I mean, that is work, but I mean, it's not laying bricks, so to speak.
Avalonia,
Avalonia.
I saw something about that on your page.
Yeah, Avalonia Festival. Once again, it kind of derives from Avalon and the title. But Avalonia Festival is on its 7th live event coming up this November.
That's great.
Thank you. And this is for short films, 21 minutes and under. And people can enter. I have basically I have several categories for films. I have a vampire category. I have a canine and a feline category, dark comedy. This one that I added this year was environmental documentary. The idea was that typically with film festivals, they don't give out a whole lot of awards, but they accept a lot of films. The difference with Avalonia Festival is if your film gets accepted into Avalonia Festival, you've won an award. And if you win an award, your film gets accepted into the festival. But if there's no films that get accepted that just play and don't win an award, if that makes any sense.
Do they have to be new? Do they have to be new films, or can they be old?
No, I don't. They can be old. They can be old. And I do break it down by, I have the 1 minute and under category, the 1 minute movie. For every category, for every genre, you have 1 minute and under, 3 minutes and under, and then the 21 minutes and under. Because I didn't want, it's not fair to have a 20-minute movie competing against a 1 minute movie.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I try to, when I created this festival, the idea was I want to create a festival that I would want to enter if I was the filmmaker. You know what I mean? So the first 3 festivals were in Rhode Island, and the last 3 have been in Florida. And that was one smart move I made. I didn't make it like the Rhode Island State Film Festival or something like that. I made it a festival that has a name that could move with when I move. You know what I mean?
That's important. Yeah, you're not tied to one place.
It's a mobile film festival per se.
Yeah, it's the first, like I said, the first 3 were in Rhode Island when I lived there, and then when I moved to Florida, I actually booked the festival before I moved, and luckily I've had 3 venues in Jacksonville, Ormond Beach, Florida, and then back in Jacksonville to do these festivals. And it's another way of meeting people. And to be honest, the reason why I started running a film festival was because I was spending so much money entering other people's film festivals. Right. And I had to think of a way, how do I get some of my money back from entering everybody else's festival? Well, I better run my own festival and get some money.
Hey,
well,
Mike.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, what your budget was, because I mean, trying to make a film on a budget is an art form in itself, I guess. So what kind of budget are you normally looking at? I guess you're trying to keep the prices down, and you're making kind of shorter films, but what would be your typical budget for a movie?
Usually, for a short film, it can be usually less than $1,000. Like, for instance, if people watch The Impeccable on Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel, which I think I've won, the film has won 2 awards for Nadia Zakarian as the character of Denise the Niece, and then Ashley Shea won a Best Actress award from Alternative Film Festival as her aunt. But basically, that film, which is 21 minutes long, and it doesn't look like it cost less than $1,000, but it did, because I worked with my buddy Tim Labonte, who's a great DP editor. He's basically a one-man gang when it comes to filming stuff. We had a volunteer production assistant. She was great. The actors, we paid them, but nominally. They were great actors, and they believed in the script, and they believed in me. And we filmed it in one day. And the reason we were able to film a movie that is pretty dialogue heavy in one day is because, unlike a lot of directors, I actually rehearsed my actors. We did Zoom rehearsals, which was the first time I employed that strategy, but I will always do that from now on, because I think the 2 actresses were in Massachusetts and the actor Adam was in Vermont. Yeah. So rather than trying to get everybody together, I said, why don't we just do these Zoom rehearsals? And that way everybody feels comfortable with their characters. They've got their lines down, especially for the way that I write. I write such big dialogue, like long chunks of dialogue. Right. So it's not even fair to get the actors on set if they haven't been rehearsed. And so once we did this movie shoot, the way that I set it up was we filmed on May 5th, 2018. I had May 6th booked for everybody. I said, look, we gotta put May 6th aside, because if we got to film a second day, we're going to, but we'll really try not to. And everybody got it. Everybody understood, like, we're going to try and do this in one day, but we have the second day as a backup in case we need it. And we were able to film it in one day. And people can watch that movie, like I said, The Impeccable, and they can judge for themselves. Was it successful? I think it was. The biggest budget I've ever had for my own movies is about $12,000 for a feature film I wrote, directed, and co-produced once again with Tim Labonte, called Blood Sugar Sid Ace. And that movie was funded because I was hit by a drunk driver.
Yeah,
a guy.
Car accident. The car accident story. Yeah. From what
the car accident.
The car accident movie. There were actually 2 car accident movies, correct?
Yeah, there's a little. Yeah, you got it. Thanks. You must have been watching Disregard the Vampire Mike Messier documentary.
I did.
Because the second chunk of change, the second part of the settlement, funded a shoot with Raven, the ECW wrestling legend Raven in Philadelphia. And that was to go towards Chris and the Coffee Girl, which is a movie that's not been completed or even close to it. But I do have the raw footage of basically Raven scalding me like a government mule for about 4 hours up on Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. It's a if you like pro wrestling, if you like Raven, or even if you don't, I think it's terribly interesting to watch the Raven Mike Messier in Chris and the Coffee Girl, the Philadelphia Experiment. So yeah, that was the second of the 2 car accident movie projects.
Yeah, the car accident trilogy, as it will hopefully not be known. Yeah,
next accident you have.
No, Mike, I smell insurance fraud.
Yeah, let's do number 3. Yeah,
right.
The statute of limitations.
I don't know anything about it.
I'll say this though, on a serious note about that situation. I was actually driving the boxer Vinny Pazienza home that night, and Vinny's been in a few car accidents that have kind of made his life significant. And people, if you saw the movie Bleed for This, which is the Vinny Pazienza story, his boxing career was almost ended by a near fatal car accident. And I'm driving Vinny home one night in Rhode Island about 20 years after that car accident. And then we get hit by a drunk driver. And basically it was kind of an evening where I basically had to make a judgment call. And it's like, what am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? Like, this was about 2010. And I quickly figured, okay, I'm going to get a lawyer. I'm going to get a settlement. The lawyer gave me a very accurate money figure to expect. And my thought was I can either use this money to move to Los Angeles, or I can make a feature film. If I write a feature film that I can make for this amount of money, which was about 10 grand. And I did, you know what I mean? And I had several other film scripts, Wrestling with Sanity, Chris and the Coffee Girl, these other film scripts that would have cost at least $50,000 or $100,000. But I said, I've got to write a script that I could actually afford to make. And that became Blood Sugar Today's. And so that was a pretty interesting time of my life. And I'm very happy with how the movie came out. Once again, subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. You can watch that one for free.
Oh, cool.
We'll put that up there.
You know what? Maybe this is a good time because I know that Tom wants to ask some wrestling stuff. I got a few, I got a few stories, my brushes with wrestling. And I know Mike knows a little bit. He's got a little bit of fandom in wrestling. So where does your passion for wrestling come from?
That's a good question. You know, I think I was a kid and watching Saturday morning cartoons, and then just kind of flipping the channel, like getting to be like, I guess 8 or 9, 4th grade, and then seeing what's this stuff? This is like human cartoons. And at the time this was the days of Chief Jay Strongbow and the Wild Samoans and Mr. Fuji with the salt in the eyes. And, just watching this stuff. And then there was a match that was, I'm dating myself, but that's okay. Andre the Giant was going to wrestle Blackjack Mulligan in a Texas death match. And I had to see it, so I convinced my parents to take me, and my sister went to this thing as well. And this was, I think, the only time my sister went to a pro wrestling match, but she even had a good time with the Chief Jay Strongbow and Jules against Fuji and Saito. But I can still remember, guys, this is a long time ago, Andre the Giant putting the bear hug on Blackjack Mulligan, and Blackjack's body color is going from white to like a pink and then a red, and then like almost like purple because he's getting squeezed. And then Blackjack's putting the dreaded claw on Andre's forehead when he's in the bear hug. And so that was pretty damn good. And then from there, I got more into the National Wrestling Alliance. I went to the Crockett Cup 87 when Dusty Nikita won in Baltimore. I saw the 89 Great American Bash in Baltimore. I was there for that when Flair and Funk and Muta and Sting. When Owen Hart won the King of the Ring tournament, I was there with my friends Chris and Colin. I did some pro wrestling matches. I was a really good ring announcer in the independent scene in New England. I had a job interview for the WWE creative writing team in 2007. I think I should have been hired. They didn't hire me. On my YouTube channel, I bitch about that quite a bit. And I did some commentary for Top Rope Promotions. That was the group that we had Scott Hall the night that he had that breakdown. I was there for that. That was in Fall River, Mass. That was a pretty sad night. I was there about 10 feet away from the ring when New Jack sliced up Eric Kulos's head. I was writing a pro wrestling column called The Foreign Object the night that happened. So at Ring of Honor, I went to some of the first Ring of Honor shows when they had the tag team title tournament. I was there for that. That was like back in 2002. I went to Barely Legal in 97. I had a pro wrestling press pass for a while. When I was in college, I wrote an article called The Foreign Object for the Providence, the Rhode Island
Great
College
name.
Anchor.
Great
Thank you.
name.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a Facebook wrestling group called The Foreign Object now. So I would get press passes to all the ECW shows in New England. Paul Richard, who was one of their referees, would get me a press pass, and I would go to Waltham and Webster to see these ECW shows when they were doing New England twice a month. And Heyman was telling me that they were making more money in New England than they did in Philly, and through the concessions, through the T-shirts. And I saw some great wrestling at that time. And, there was a real part of me that wanted to work in pro wrestling, but I really tried for a long time, guys. Like I said, I had a job interview for WWE in Titan Tower. I didn't get hired. I contacted TNA a couple of years later. Terry Taylor was really nice to me. But basically, Terry Taylor, interestingly enough, said, Mike, I think you're like, that's that expression, the square peg in the round hole. He's like, basically he's saying you have some writing skills here, but Jeff Jarrett's doing what you want to do. Like we've already got a booker. You want to be the booker, but we've already got that. So wrestling is a tough business. I mean, I still feel like I could go in and my storyline, Conquest for the Ages, is what I propose to the WWE. And I think that storyline is money. And I'm thinking about just publishing that as a book on Amazon, because I feel like if people were the real wrestling hardcore people, if they were to read what I wrote for a proposed storyline, they would see that I'm a better writer than whoever they've got now. You know what I mean?
Go ahead and do it, man. I mean,
that, Mike, would you write that as like a fan fiction with like the actual stars currently? How would you write that? Well,
I think I would. You know, it's funny. I've got when I first wrote it was back in 2002, because I applied to write for the WWE in 2002 through the mail, and then I had a job interview 5 years later in person at Titan Tower. But
that's a slow turnaround.
Well, no, there was two different processes. So but rejected both times. But the 2007 actually got to the in-person thing. I feel like at the time where like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Benoit was even in my storyline, and so forth, Eddie. So I feel like if I were to publish that, it would really be good. And I probably will do it eventually. You know what I mean? Because it is something that kind of nags on me, guys. Like I do feel like I have a mind. I really have some good ideas for pro wrestling. One of them being that I created several types of different matches, you know what I mean? And tournaments. And for instance, TNA started doing that in their top years, like 2004, 2005, 2006, with the X Division and stuff. And I was kind of thinking in those same type of ways, like how do we make a tournament that nobody's ever seen before? Or how do we make a match that nobody's ever done before? And I came up with 8 of them. And I'm pretty happy with all of them. So I think they could still work. You know what I mean?
You got to keep pegging at it, man.
Yeah. You know, and at some point, I mean, I wrote to Tony Khan a couple of times, and I don't know if he ever got the letters. I sent the letters to him via the football team, the Jaguars. I mean, I'd like to propose some of my ideas to AEW. There's another part of me, guys, to be real raw, is that the wrestling business, there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of deception and backstabbing in that business. And I don't know if I have the morality or what to hang with those type of people, because kind of like a church, like if you ever gone to church, but then you volunteer to be part of the church, you find out like the inner workings are not as good as like the outer workings.
You're a fan, and they are the business side. So, you know, it doesn't always align. And you have a history, you know, you've been following pro wrestling. So you have a skill and you're a writer, but they're the business side of it. And those things don't always align, you know?
Well,
unfortunately,
I get it. It's like I said about like the night that Kulas got stabbed, right? Like that's what I learned, because I went to the kid's house to interview him. If people don't know, this is the famous New Jack mass transit incident I'm talking about. But when I was there to see that live and talking to Heyman live after the matches, because I'm interviewing him, I kind of realized, wow, you know, this pro wrestling's great. Everybody's great until something goes wrong. Then like cockroaches with the flashlight, everybody scampers to safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of lost, you know, that's when I had the first inclinations that this is a business that you got to watch your back. That's why I stopped wrestling in matches, because I wasn't insured. I didn't have the proper training. My opponents didn't have the proper training. So every time I'm going out there to wrestle a match, really just going by instinct. Yeah, right. If I break my neck, no one's going to be doing.
No one's going to come help you. Yeah, I mean that's it. It's like tough luck.
And that's what happened to that kid. And then Eric Kulas, he died, you know, 3 or 4 years after that. He never got over it. You know what I mean?
Well, so, it's a devastating bit. I mean, Chris Benoit for instance, like everything about that sounded like people should have seen this coming. Like, it sounds like he was a genuinely decent guy before all the brain damage, and then just one day, perfect storm, you know, a little bit of drugs, a little bit of drinking, a little bit of brain damage, and suddenly you got you. And how about the stress of? I want to say his kid was autistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Something like
So
that.
just it sounds like wrestling eats their young in a lot of, you know, like I mean, there's all those stories of the people that you know you don't hear about anymore, but were huge, like Ultimate Warrior. He went south. Ric Flair, he's kind of, you know, they're not looking after him in his old age. It's kind of what's that?
Isn't he gone?
He's still alive.
He's still alive.
Oh, okay.
But
that
like
one.
now he's
Roddy
like
Piper
selling his robes, like, to make money. It's like it's kind of sad. It kind of reminds me of the NFL in a lot of ways, where you got these guys.
It's very similar. Yeah, like I said, there's the entertainment, there's the talent, and then there's the business, and they don't always line up.
Business side always sucks, man. It's
any business. I mean, it's not just wrestling. It's any business.
But like, that one always bothered me because it seemed like Chris Benoit was a pretty relatively decent guy. And then you see, but then there's creeps too. Like, personally for me, I lived in Clearwater, the Clearwater area. So I used to work with Leapin' Lanny Poffel.
Oh yeah.
He's a dick, but but his brother apparently was too. Randy, his brother, you know, his brother was Randy Savage, right? Yeah. And apparently he used to beat up on Elizabeth, and the nicest guy out of that group was probably Hulk Hogan, and he turned out to be a creep towards the end of his, you know, being something that was, you know, people were still looking at. Now I'm sure he's just. Look,
no one can live up to, I mean, what these characters are, these guys, no one can live up to that. I mean, there is a fantasy element to pro wrestling.
Oh, that's why it's sports entertainment, yeah.
But what I'm saying, and in any sport, even, I mean, in baseball, football, I mean, you look at like Deion Sanders, right, from our generation, or, you know, you look at Patrick Mahomes, like his wife and brother, douchebags, right? No one can live up to what the media, you know, makes you seem like you are, right? So, I mean, Hulk Hogan
comes back to the media, right?
Well, what I'm saying is, I mean, Hulk Hogan, the whole thing that he went through with what was that website? Daily Beast, Gawker, whatever. Yeah. You know, all that stuff. Like, no one wanted to hear any of that. I mean, I didn't want to hear any of that. I want to think about Hulk Hogan and Mr. T and Roddy Piper and Randy Savage. I mean, I don't want to think about Gawker and all this other crap. I mean, I want to be in the bubble, right? But no one can live up to that. I mean, it's irrational. And the thing is, in our generation, and I don't know how old you are, Mike. I mean, we're all like 50.
Younger than you.
Yeah, we're all like 50. You know, but I mean, I always point at like Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars came out in 1977. It was a kid's movie. I saw it when I was 5 years old. I freaking loved it. And then in 97, they did the special editions, and then later they did the prequels, and everyone's like, I want it to be darker. Like, I'm like, it was never supposed to be darker. It was made for 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, right? And now we have Mandalorian, which is, I don't even want my kid watching. She's like 7. I'm not going to watch The Mandalorian with her. It's vicious, you know, or Boba Fett or whatever. My point is, it's never like, it's never sustainable. Like, you can't go home again, you know.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
And that's why you got to create new myths and new legends. And, that's something that, like with The Distance from Avalon, that's why I try to put my own spin on it. And, some of the stuff you're saying, I was going to say, guys, that the toughest thing I think with both pro wrestling and the film world is collaboration. Collaboration is the greatest thing about the arts, and it's also the worst thing. When you have an idea for, say, a movie, well, who do you need? You need, if you don't have your camera yourself, you're going to have to get a crew. If you don't edit yourself, you need an editor. You need a composer if you want music. You need a soundtrack, musicians to give you some music. And some of them are going to have, music licensing and stuff. You need to hire actors. And if one of your actors is in the Screen Actors Guild, then you've got a whole stack of paperwork to look forward to. So my point is, for me, especially in this worldwide situation, as I call it, for the last couple of years, I got so frustrated with the film collaboration. I said, what can I do on my own that I don't need other people to help me with? And the reality is, writing is something I can do by myself. It's free to write. You don't have to hire anybody else to write if you're a writer. And I had already got the stories in screenplay form. So basically I had to print up those screenplays that I've had for years and then adapt them into novels, which is really the reverse of how most things happen. Most times people write a novel and then the writer
And then the screenplay.
translates to a screenplay, right? But I went in reverse with The Distance from Avalon. And then with Fight or Play Basketball, I did the same thing. And one thing I can say about, like I said, this worldwide situation is it's kind of like a gut check time. Like, how much do you want it? And for me, I do want success and I want to share my work, like you were saying, about reaching a bigger audience. But if my filmmaking ability or potential even is restricted because of this god-awful situation we're all going through, I can still write and nobody can take that away from me. And I'm happy that Amazon has that capability now that people like myself, 20 years ago, you'd have to pay some vanity press to print up a bunch of your books and try to get your money back. And those were scams that were going on for years and years. But at least with Amazon, as a writer, you don't have to pay up front for your books.
You can self-publish.
You can self-publish. And if I get a copy of my own book, I'm paying the author's fee to get a copy as opposed to what the general public is paying. So I like things like that. And a lot of people put down a monolithic company like Amazon, but for me, it's working out pretty well.
Well, I will say, and this is just to your point, Mike, and just stuff I've been thinking through, because I've been really sad with the diminishing influence of cinema, over with the COVID and everything else. But I've kind of been heartened a little bit, and I think we're on the verge of a period of time where cinema will make a comeback. And I'm not being Pollyannish with this. I mean, if you look at like our culture right now, you've got, again, corporate media, you've got social media, you've got Twitter, pop culture, TikTok, all these things that are like, we give 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to things. And that's really being rejected by a lot of people in favor of, I would say, the Joe Rogans of the world, the podcasts, the long form interviews, literature. And I think cinema will also backfill and have a resurgence. I think people are longing for a longer form, form of entertainment, and not just having things be push button. Yeah, right? I think we're hungry for it. I think what we're seeing a lot in our culture is a rejection of this kind of like push button, clickbait sort of stuff. So I hope that cinema will be part of that wave. And I see people like Joe Rogan and podcasts and these long form interviews as kind of like the leading edge of that. But cinema requires you to take time, right? 90 minutes, 120 minutes to sit in a theater, turn your phone off, and like see. And I really think there's a hunger for that. I'm hoping there is, but I think we're on the verge of a rebirth of that. Yeah, I really do. I'm more optimistic than I used to be.
Well, and to that note, I mean, I'd say it's been a good 10 years since we've had that epic album. That
Albums
one
too,
album
yeah.
that comes out.
Everything's singles
and,
now. Yeah, everything is singles
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I'm thinking for me, probably the last full album that I could just listen to constantly. We're probably talking 90s, man. Maybe Verses by Pearl Jam for me would be one of them. There's not a lot. I mean, we don't have that Pink Floyd The Wall or Pink Floyd Everything They Did, where just every album was freaking ridiculous. It's like you said, we need that long form. We need that escape from reality for an hour and a half, 2 hours, listening to that album, just chilling on the couch.
But I think that's why podcasts, and again, I point to Joe Rogan, but whatever. I mean, I think people want more than what the corporate media is giving us. And that will seek its own level, right? I mean, people aren't interested in a 3-minute soundbite. That doesn't.
Yeah, you can't
Twitter
sustain on Twitter on Twitch videos alone or whatever. Yeah,
I mean, that doesn't satisfy you intellectually, and so I think cinema will. I don't know if it's going to be in a theater. I hope it is, because to me, cinema has a social aspect to it. You can't just watch a movie in your house. There's something different about watching something with 1,000 people in the same room than it is watching it on your screen in your house.
Right.
It's a different experience.
Yeah, I'll give you a good one, if I may, Mike. I'm sorry. One of my favorite experiences in a movie in a real long time, and this is kind of a social commentary, but so I'm watching Django, right? And as everybody's seen Django Unchained, the Jamie Foxx, Quentin Tarantino. So they use a word about 1,500 times in the movie. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching, there's a couple black guys sitting next to me, and I'm just it's getting to a point where it's comical, because he did it to a point where it becomes a farce. He's making a statement about the word. And I'm just I'm not going to laugh, because now it's starting to just be funny how ridiculous it is. And I just look over to these two black guys, and the guy literally just goes, just gives me the thumbs up. And it was right around that same time, everybody in the whole theater just started laughing. And it was just it was such a powerful moment of it's okay, man. Everybody gets it.
And you wouldn't have that moment in your living room watching it by yourself.
No, you go to work and talk about the movie and how offended you were by the word, but then you sit there and you're comfortable with people that should be offended by the word. Movies, it's this community experience.
Movies should be viewed in a community, with people. I mean, ideally, I think.
Well, there's a couple of things that are coming that are happening now. Is the 3D movie experience is getting a lot better. Just in the last couple of years, movies that are in 3D look a lot better than 10, 15 years ago. And also, I don't know if you guys have D-box seats where you guys are, but here we've got a couple of theaters that have D-boxes, which are basically you sit in your chair at the movie theater and your movie chair shakes around and vibrates in conjunction with the film. So I saw Batman, the new one, like that, and it was a lot of fun. And I think one of the Star Wars movies from a couple of years ago was like that. And even a Liam Neeson movie, like one of his, Save the Day movies,
Taken
was in
5.
D-box.
Yeah.
So it's called what was it, Guy on a Subway or something?
It was like the guy's son got killed, and then he goes and kills the guys that killed his son.
So it's called D-box. So this is like Sensorama.
It's in Cinemark theaters have what's called D-box. So Cinemark theaters, and I don't know if other theater chains have it, but I know Cinemark does. It's called D-box, and it's basically like a roller coaster chair. You know what I mean? It's just
I mean, that's I mean, not the
William
exact
Castle.
execution, but the idea has been around in
William
exhibition. Yeah, the Tingler, right?
Yeah.
What's
Um,
this?
the Tingler. They put an electrical charge under your seat, but it's only in certain seats. No, but I'm saying the idea has been around. The
no, I get it.
execution has gotten better.
Yeah.
But
They
I
got to
mean,
do it like Nerf guns. So like when you're in like a big scene where everybody's getting shot, you can just be sitting there and you're getting hit by Nerf bullets. Sounds great.
yeah,
Here's an experience at Epcot Center where I was yesterday. There's this environmental movie that I go see. Right, it's a 10-minute movie about the Earth and the all that good stuff.
all that
And
crap.
during the movie, when they say that there's like a lightning in the movie, right? The theater, the lights flicker, and they do, and they have. I think there's even like a little gust of wind that comes into the theater. So I'm just saying that it's kind of cool. At Epcot, they've made this 10-minute movie that's like exhibition, but you're getting some bells and whistles in your theatrical. And I wonder if that could be translated to a movie that I would write or produce. You know what I mean, or anybody else. But I mean, that would be fantastic if you could have a movie. Let's say it's a horror film, and there's lightning that strikes, and then suddenly you're in the theater, and there's like a lighting effect in the actual fucking theater when you're watching your movie. Sorry for swearing. I just get excited by this stuff. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
like Hitchcock, one of the first ones to do that, where he would like put like a buzzer in the seat or something like that.
William Castle.
Yeah. Castle was big into that.
I see Mike doing it on the $10,000 budget. And it's just going to be like a storm's coming, and some guys, the usher's just going to come up and be like,
I'll be honest. I mean, I still strive. I mean, I have done so many low budget things that's kind of why I also put the emphasis on writing books, because I figured, making these low budget movies is not really helping me make a big budget movie. So if I switch gears and write these stories as novels, maybe I'll get a following as a writer. Mm-hmm. And then somebody out there will say, hey, this guy has written a couple of good books. Maybe we should see if we can make one of his movies into a film. And I can happily say, well, I wrote the screenplay already 10 years ago.
I was just going to
Well,
say,
I salute you for making original content.
I don't need a screenplay.
Yeah, I salute you for making original content, Mike. I mean, as a cinema goer, I'm done with the remakes and the rehashes and the reboots and all that stuff. I mean, I know I'm a single voice here on this podcast, but I'm not a huge Marvel movie fan. It's just I feel like it's been done a million times. But getting to your point with like the sense around, I managed a theater in the mid '90s, and we had a lot of pigeons in the theater because it was a horrible second run $1.75 house theater. We did. That's where I'm getting at. So it wasn't intended, but there was some of that there. Well, this was in Baltimore, so we used to like the movie would end and there'd be cracked crab shells on the floor. So it's a whole different experience. Anyway, Jack, I know we got to get going soon. And Tom, what happened to Tom? He just got like evaporated. What happened to him?
I think he gave the soft wave. I think he had to go. But hey, listen, Mike, anything you want to plug before I sign this out?
Well, Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary. I think that's the one that you watched, Jack, and thanks for watching it. If people want to kind of see the visual representation of some of the anecdotes that we've talked about tonight, like I said, Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary, on subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Thanks for letting me plug my books. Fight or Play Basketball is brand new.
Oh, you read some books?
Yeah, these are the books I've written. Yeah.
No, we're gonna link to those. We'll link to those as well, Mike.
All right, cool guys.
And the Avalonia Festival, for any filmmakers out there.
I'm gonna submit a film to you.
Thank you.
Hey, stay on for 1 second after we go here, Mike, okay?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Hey, Jack, why don't you sign us off and then I'll stop recording.
Absolutely. We've been on for a little while now, boys. I think it's time that we wrap things up.
We'll see you next week, everyone out there in podcast land. Take care.
Cool.
guys
That's
doing?
good.
How's my sound? Am I all right?
It's bad. We can hear you.
Yeah. Can you turn it down, Tom, so we don't
Try
hear
to
you
fix
at
that.
all?